When it comes to board gaming conventions, there are two that stand out on the top, and that's Gen Con, which just happened earlier this summer, and Essen, which is right around the corner. Now, usually I tend to focus more on Gen Con because, one, it is in the country I'm in, making it easier for me to visit. Two, it happens earlier, so they tend to have a lot of things there first, and then those things will appear at Essen. And then three, it's majority English language, meaning that if I look up a game and where it's going to be released by what publisher, it should only be that publisher, because depending on different countries and languages, games might actually be published by different companies. We usually make a video of the games we're most excited about to see at Gen Con, and I thought I'd try that out for Essen this year. No, I will not be going to Essen this year, but this still could be a useful guide to you, and this is my first one, so there are going to be maybe some hiccups in particular when it comes to publishers in terms of which language, so I will try to make sure I differentiate that, so keep an eye on that. But there are a couple other things I want to point out as well. First off, I'm not going to try to have any overlap with my Gen Con video. You can go watch that one for any other games. They should be at Essen. The big thing you're going to have to keep in mind is the last video I did, I added booth numbers. Those will not correlate to the Essen booth numbers, so you'll have to look up what company they're being released by and make sure you find them that way. Two, I'm going to be really careful and try to make sure I differentiate and say, like, this company is the German version if they have multiple versions, and hopefully I can try to split that apart, because I usually go by company name in this list, not most exciting, just to cover everything. And if I do find out that they are being published by a different company in a different booth, I'll try to put that there as well, just in case you're looking for a very specific version of the game. But without further ado, let's take a look at some of the coolest titles coming to Essen in 2022. Like I said in the beginning, I will not be talking about every game because that would be way too long, and partially because some of these games I've already talked about in my Gen Con videos. I highly recommend, in addition to this one, you check out the Gen Con preview as well as my Gen Con Top 10 to see some other hot games that you should be keeping an eye out for. That said, I did pull out a quick list of games that I already talked about, and you'll see them on screen with their booth number. This is just so I don't go over too long, but this is a great way to find, maybe, for example, Cat in the Box, which was a big hit at Gen Con. You know what booth to go to. And one final note before we begin, I want to remind everyone I am terrible at pronouncing things, so I apologize in advance for anything that I say horribly, horribly wrong. But now let's talk about the new games that you should be checking out at Essen. Just like the Gen Con preview video, we're going to be going by order of company name alphabetically, which means we're actually going to be starting off with some numbers with Two Tomato Games. Now, the game I'm interested from them is called Coral. It seems to be a game where you get these Tetris-like blocks in which you'll be assembling them in order to try and build a coral reef. It's the kind of thing that just looks very fun and visually to mess around and play with, and I'm sure it will be even more fun to get the chance to demo while there. Next up, we're going to go to Ager Games and Europa Universalis, The Price of Power. This was actually a game I got to check out back in 2018. Our impression is actually still listed in the recent reviews section on the Board Game Geek page. It's based on the game. It looks like if you love those big war games, it's going to be a cool one to check out. I remember having a lot of fun with what little I got to see with it. Hopefully, it's now finally going to be able to hit tables officially for fans. Then we head over to Ali for the new Puerto Rico 1897. I'm really excited to see this new version of Puerto Rico. And then Alley Cat has a ton of games, but three games that have caught my eye is first the 20th anniversary of Amon-Re. Then there's Eternal Palace. This was on Kickstarter, I believe, a while back. It had this fun game about rebuilding the castle and using dice workers. It was a bit more of a personal pick that I thought looked cool. But in terms of games with a bit more hotness and excitement, I'm seeing a lot about Autobahn. This is a game about building up the famous German highway over actually the period of time, I believe starting around World War II. I'm really curious to see how this all plans out and what kind of decisions you have to make. It looks crunchy and heavy, but I'm sure it's one of those games, just judging by just how people are talking about, that once you get into it, you get really excited about all the different kinds of planning you can do. Then we head over to Aporta Games. They have a game called Revive. This one looks really cool, and in particular, the setting It's absolutely my alley. It's you bringing or reviving back civilization after everything was destroyed. Post-apocalypse, sign me up. Then heading over to Banan Games, there's Valda Ragnarok. This is a deck building game. We actually got to try out the previous Rise of Giants expansion. Then this is definitely a personal one, but if you're looking for something a bit more fun and silly, gotta go find Bar Pig with their new expansion, Bar Pig: The Great Festival. I don't think you'll be able to buy it there because the Kickstarter should be going live very soon, but absolutely check it out. Bar Pig, one of my favorite party games. And if you want to know more, depending on when you're listening to this, there will be or already has been a video of me playing the new expansion, The Great Festival. So definitely go and check that out. We're going to head over to Board and Dice now, which you may have noticed Terracotta Warriors mentioned earlier in the already mentioned part of the Gen Con sort of related games. They have two titles there that I want to mention. First off, we have Origins, Ancient Wonders, the expansion for Origins, as well as Tiltum, which I did get to see there. It's really cool. It's all about trying to balance moving where your guy is versus where you can build things so you don't have to be in certain locations for bonuses to trigger. And I want to point out this is one of those games that'll be in a different location for the German version if that is the language copy you're looking for. Then we get up the catch-up games for the French version of Orichalcum. This is the Bruno Cathala game about leaving Atlantis and trying to set up new land. I believe there will be an English printing later with Pandasaurus, but we'll have to wait and see. And like I said in the intro, that could be different depending on what country you're in. Then we head over to Corvus Belli for Warcrow Adventures. This game is a dungeon crawler with tons of minis, but we don't know much beyond that. So if you're the kind of person who likes Descent, this is probably one you're going to want to check out to see what's going on here and what does this game have to offer. Then at Days of Wonder, there's the Heat Pedal to the Metal. I did technically see this at Gen Con, but I think I didn't really talk too much about it. It's a really cool racing game that brings a lot more of the environment in the sense of like temperature, worrying about the heat of your tires and stuff. So it looks like it brings something a bit more different to maybe some of the other racing games that we're used to. Then we have a game called Woodcraft from Delicious Games. This looks like to be a sort of dice management game, but what I'm curious about in the description says you will actually cut down the size of dice. I don't know if that means that the dice actually modularly come apart or if it's more like certain dice have different number values. You can break them up that way. Unfortunately, we don't know much more beyond that because I believe this is the first time they're showing it. So this is definitely one you'll probably want to just stop by the booth to see what this game's about. Then we need to head over to Devir, which was another company that had a bunch of hits at Gen Con. This one, though, is called Lacrimosa. This sounds like such a weird but interesting concept that revolves around Mozart. It seems that you will not be playing as the musician himself, but rather as people who supported him, his patrons. But you're not simply just playing while he's around. It seems you're playing in both the time period he was alive, trying to help him move around, as well as when he's died in the, I don't know if which one you consider present or past or future, but that one you're trying to get other artists to help fill in the final holes in maybe his uncompleted works. It has such an interesting concept as well as having both the past and present / future without being sci-fi related. I'm really curious to see how all these mechanics mesh up and sync together. Next, we head over to Frosted Games, which has first off Earthborn Rangers. Really excited for this card game. Really want to see it and check it out. Then they also have a bunch of German versions of many popular games, including the Frostpunk game and the Hostage Negotiator. Both of those probably very good picks if you're more of a solo player mindset. Frostpunk technically can be more, but I imagine it works very well, just like the video game, on your own. Then we head over to Gale Force 9, which have a bunch of sci-fi goodies. First off, we have Akrakus, Dawn of the Freeman. This is a game when you play before everything we know in Dune, and you are playing as different Freeman groups fighting over the planet. Then we have Firefly, Misbehavin', a deck builder in the Firefly universe. Then keeping up with the sci-fi rogue shenanigans, we've got Starfinder, Pirates of Skydock, where you'll be competing against each other to have the greatest heist of all time. Then we head over to Godot Games. First off, they have Human Punishment, The Beginning. We did a preview video for this one. Big, heavy game, cyberpunk style. Watch the video if you want to learn more. Then they have another one called Among Cultists, which seems to be that some of you are investigators trying to stop, of course, a great old one, while some of you may be cultists. And then if you couldn't tell from the title, this is definitely the kind of game when you're going to be looking around at the other players and trying to find out which one of you is sus. Then from Greater Than Games, we actually have that, at least here in the US, the Target exclusive Horizon Spirit Island. This is meant to be a lighter Spirit Island. I'm really curious about this one because I love Spirit Island, but it is a very clunky, hard to understand game, and it can be very intimidating to people. So I'm actually really looking forward to this, to have a way to get more people to play this game without being too intimidated. Yellow has King of Monster Island. This is the new cooperative game in the world of King of Tokyo, or is it just King of? Regardless, I'm super excited about this. I'm always down for kaijus, and the King of Tokyo is one of my first games. I'm really excited to see what they did and what they changed in order to make it a more cooperative experience. Then we have the Robin Hood expansion at Cosmos. This is the campaign game, really cool, worth checking out. And speaking of expansions, at the next booth, which I'm going to now horribly pronounce, La Bois de Jeu, we have the Detective City of Angels expansion, Nouveaux Crimes. This is actually included in the US version, I believe, if I read this correctly. They were not, though, in the French version. So if you like this game, which if you like to have games like I do, you probably would, this is going to be one you want to pick up. But there are two more base games there that you should keep an eye on. First, there's From the Moon, which is a bit more of a darker, sadder game in which you need to try to send out survival missions. You're going to competing different factions who does the best ones because all life on Earth is dying. So it's the very sad thing of who can find the next seeds of life as life disappears from Earth as we know it. But in a different take of the end of the world, we have Tribes of Wind. We're now in the post-apocalyptic Earth, and you're trying to rebuild the world by harnessing the elements. You'll have different things to do around the board in which you use cards with different powers. But what's interesting is the back of the cards will have different symbols, and depending on what your opponents have in their hand could change things up. So you actually have your entire hand in like little card slots so you can see every card your opponent has on the back, meaning that the backs of cards matter just as much of what's on the front. Then we're going to head over to Lookout Games with Uwe Rosenberg's Atiwa. This is a game all about fruit bats, which just look absolutely adorable. This game is about growing your farm and trying to balance what the village needs in terms of obviously food resources, as well as the bats, which are going to be a core central pillar of the environment. And I'm sure the bats, being fruit bats, actually can also help you plant seeds if you can learn just how to make sure they don't eat too much of your crops. Then from Looping Games, we have 1998 ISS. This is all about the International Space Station, and it seems to be as one side plays as US, the other Russia, competing with each other in order to build up the station on Earth, while the astronauts in space are completing experiments, which seems to be the way you get your victory points. So you're balancing, of course, gaining power, resources versus the actual end game points that you need in order to actually win the game. And at Lucky Duck, a lot of people are excited for Flamecraft. I've just got my copy. I still need to play it, but obviously cute little dragons, fun artwork, definitely one you should go check out if you didn't back it on Kickstarter. Then if we look at Board & Geek's hotness list, this is the hottest game that most people are excited about. It is Hamlet from Mighty Boards. This was on Kickstarter, and of course it looks really cool where you're trying to build up the village and compete while at the same time working together to build up a church, which will be how the game ends with this beautiful 3D church in the center of the board. Then, if you are a fan of 4X games, you can head over to Mindclash for their game Voidfall. This is a 4X game, but what's interesting is it has different modes depending on what your play style. You can go in by yourself with a solo mode. There's the classic competing against each other, but there's also a cooperative mode. This gives that play style to fit whatever your group needs. So Voidfall seems to be a 4X designed to try and fit whatever your group needs at that time. And for all the sweet tooth out there, Next Move Games got you covered with Azul Chocolatier, a chocolate version for Azul. Unfortunately, I do not think the pieces are actual chocolate. Then Pandasaurus Games had a bunch of stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if Fox Experiments there, but the big one that at least I don't remember seeing at Gen Con that should be there is their new Wolves game. Then Pegasus Spiel, which actually has a lot of stuff too, and I think that mostly from the previous sheep, so definitely stop by their booth regardless. But they have the new Spaceship Unity that I actually just talked about a little while ago. That's sort of this interesting campaign game in which the house you're living in is some reason slowly converting into a spaceship, and it has like chapter 1.1 or modular 1.1. I can't remember the exact word, so very interesting to have there in addition to everything else. And now we have to go to a tried and true favorite of mine, and that's Portal Games. They had a ton of cool stuff at Gen Con, which I'm sure will be there at Essen, but they've also got some cool new stuff as well. They've got Basilica, which is actually a reprinting of a game from back in 2010, but we've also got the football game 11, which we did a preview for. This was so much fun. I love the management style. It didn't make me feel guilty that my knowledge of football, especially the European leagues, is, well, little to none. Then finally, there's the Imperial Settlers Wrath of the Lighthouse. This is a solo campaign for the Empires of North games. I mean, it just sounds so cool. Stop by Portal Games if you like those big, heavy games, or if you just want to pick up some of their detective style games. And then we're going to head over to Primogenio with their game Flow War, a pun on flower and a war, so instantly already get ton of good points there. But it seems it has a much more realistic, or interesting at the very least, connection with your workers, where you may have to fire some and they may actually go on strike, so you can't just place them willy-nilly to have them do whatever you please. And then from Rebel Studio, we have San Francisco. This is another game by Reiner Knizia that is all about building up San Francisco. Very cute little trolley pieces, as well as a 3D city. I saw, once again, a quick glimpse of it back when I was at Gen Con, but not enough to really say more than that. So maybe now you can sit down, play it, and give it a shot, or even pick it up. And then from Sit Down, we have Redwood. This is a game that's all about taking photos of the landscape and nature. And the way you're going to do that, you have to choose different cameras, which actually have different like widths and distances, as well as like these arrows for movement and angles. So it's all about trying to find weird positioning. I almost felt like it's a war game style, or your X-Wing, where you use like rulers and distance, but it's all about taking photos. So really interesting new use of a mechanic that, at least for me, is usually used for moving my piece forward and trying to ram my opponent's ship. And then Z-Man Games, they've got Challengers. This is a new one that was announced a little while ago. I talked about it in the news. It reminds me a lot of Smash Up in terms of just all these different ideas, creatures, and everything just smashing together. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the most ultimate game of Capture the Flag. Like I said, there is a lot going on and many games for you to check out, many more that I didn't even put on here because this video would be too long. But I thought I'd make a list of, pull out just a few more of maybe the ones, if I was going there, that I would most want to at least sit down and try. First, a quick honorable mentions, partially because I don't know if they'll actually be there, or they're almost cheats if I say them because they're already on my radar for a while. That's the King of Monster Island, the new adapted version for King of Tokyo. I mean, I'm always down for some kaiju fun. Then there's the Earthborn Rangers. That was a crowdfunding project a little while back and looked really awesome. Then, of course, Bar Pig. I'm going to already be lucky enough to be able to play that and show that off for you a little bit in the future, so keep an eye out for that. But in terms of some other games, if you're going to be there and would check out and just report back to me, love to hear from you. There's first off Tribes of Wind. That looked really cool. I love this whole idea of your actions depend on the back of people's cards and stuff. I'm really curious to see how that plays out. Then we've got this weird one. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but Lacrimosa. It's the one where you are playing in both like the past and present with the musicians and trying to get them to finish the music, but in the past trying to fund them. And I'm really curious to see what it goes. I mean, the pictures look like there's just so much going on that is one of those things when it's very daunting to look at, but I'm also really excited to see how everything fits together. And finally, Hamlet. I think everyone's really excited to see this one. It looks like it's really big, really popular, and probably the one I actually wouldn't get to play because the line would constantly be way too long to get down and actually demo it. Now, there are plenty of other games there, and I will admit, a lot more, I feel, heavier games that I saw, or at least the ones that caught my eye and I have on this list. I wonder if that's just because a lot of the lighter games I already saw at Gen Con. I wonder if there is a trend. Like I said, I've never actually been to Essen before, so I don't know if that is something that tends to go on, or whether this is just weird coincidence. If you have been to Essen, I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you're excited about if you're going to be there this year. And what games are you going to be targeting? Did I miss one on the list? Put it down there below. Is it because I already put it in my Gen Con list? Is it something that you think that is going to be the sleeper hit that no one is thinking about? I really would love to hear from you, especially because I won't be there. So I'll be living through all of you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Leave your comments down below. Of course, do the usual things, the like, the share, the subscribe, the bell. But more importantly, if you think this will be useful for someone, share the video for them, because maybe it'll help them find one extra game to check out while they're there. But I'm Will. Thank you so much for watching. And this has been Roll for Crit.